Captain America Civil War. Let the hot takes begin. Okay, first right off the bat, I just want to get out of the way. No disrespect to Anthony and Joe Russo. What they pulled off when they first joined up with Marvel, all the way up until their role in directing Endgame, is nothing short of legendary. And the fact that they were able to get the Winter Soldier job directly because of their work in Community, to me personally, is one of the greatest things that's ever happened in Hollywood. But I have to say, after watching Patrick H. Willems' videos, I kind of understand now what my problem was, specifically with this movie. Because taking all the other problems with all of their movies that they directed aside, the bland styling, how the storytelling seems to overcome the actual character arcs, this movie in and of itself is just problematic. And it always baffled me because I loved this movie when I first saw it in theaters. Literally to the point where I was so excited to see this movie because I was such a fan of the comic and because I was still baffled by what they had pulled off in Age of Ultron that like, I couldn't even wait until it actually came out in theater, so I watched some of it early online. And here's my takeaway specifically from this movie. The performances are great. The Russos know how to work with actors. I still don't think that there's a bad performance in this movie. The action, they bring everything that made the Winter Soldier great into this movie, and the action is stepped up a notch. And yes, I will never debate this. They know how to work with ensembles. They have made that clear since day one, and it is the one feat from their TV days they managed to carry over very well. Problems, though, come from the fact that this movie ultimately, ironically enough, cannot pick a side. Because the whole point of this movie is that it's finally for once, the Avengers are being held to task. Granted, rather unfairly, I would like to say, but this phase of the MCU really did start to look on the Avengers in a little bit of a dark light, presumably in order to try and add as much moral gray to that area as they could before Thanos came. And the problem is that this movie goes from 1 minute to wanting us to not like the Avengers because of the amount of damage they cause, even though the events that clearly happen are very much not their fault and out of their hands and control. But I get it, you know, that's usually how this happens. Things happen that are out of people's controls, and as a result, more government oversight comes in. But then, the movie wants you to embellish it and have fun in all the crazy superhero action is they just cause more collateral damage across the course of the movie. This is where the whole political thriller edge of the Russo brothers movies really start to fall apart. It worked for Winter Soldier because for the most part that movie is still grounded in the action and that movie is still primarily an action movie. But here, no, this is a full-on superhero movie that it's trying to take seriously. Not to mention the fact that it has easily some of the most tragic twists and turns of the MCU, but it does not at all have the cojones to go through with them all the way. To me, the biggest surprise, I guess I should say, when I watched this was always, why is the airport fight not the end battle third act? Like, yes, it's an interesting choice to have it at the end of your second act, but with how the third act ties up, because the problem is that this movie is trying to be both the third Avengers movie to tie down everyone until Thanos comes, while also being a wrap-up to the Winter Soldier arc. The problem is, half the interesting stuff for the Winter Soldier arc happens off-screen, and all the Avengers stuff that happens ultimately just ends up coming down to Cap and Tony, and the rest of the Avengers kind of just go away after a while, and they don't really have their voices heard. Like, to me, the only other one that really has a compelling arc in this movie is Black Panther. And to me, this is still the only part of the movie that really works, is the part where his arc to me is way more compelling than Tony's or Cap's. Like I said, I gotta reiterate, I will not take anything away from the performances in this movie. Evans and Downey are, at least in this point in the MCU, probably gave the best performances that they had at this point. Like, I was amazed after quite possibly his most bombastic and over-the-top performance yet. Downey really pulled it back and got so subtle and somber for this movie. But yeah, this was the point where the big team-up Marvel movies started to get undercut by a lot of the solo movies afterwards, because again, another huge problem that I had is everyone gives Marvel all this credit for continuity, but the overlying continuity, not so good. Because I'm sorry, I get it, because the excuse is that half the Phase 3 movies either happen off the radar or off-world, but where the hell were the Sokovia Accords of General Ross when Spider-Man blew up a plane over Coney Island? And the end fight, I'm sorry, I get it, I know you gotta keep Bucky alive from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but like, him and Rhodey, really? Did you need to keep them alive after this movie? So yeah, the emotion, it rings true, and this movie has still got some of the best moments of the MCU in it, but overall, as a movie, I gotta say, I was not at all impressed. I don't know if it's because it's a victim of being like probably my most watched Marvel movie and it just didn't hold up time after time after time or what, but this movie only gets 3.5 out of 5 stars from me. Iron Man 2. Oh boy, even more hot takes. Yeah, that's right, I liked Iron Man 2 more than Civil War on my rewatch. I mean, I always liked this movie. I never understood why people hated this movie so much. Yeah, sure, it's got problems, but overall as a movie, yes, I will admit there are elements that hold this back from being truly great, and it was never gonna hit the heights that the first Iron Man did. But this movie also came out before Marvel became really, really mainstream, so Jon Favreau was still able to take some risks in the director's chair, and man, he did that. Because to me, with the exception of the S.H.I.E.L.D. parts of this movie, which I still will admit are the weakest parts of this movie, this is a great second installment. Like, it finds new ways to plunge Tony Stark even deeper and more down than he already was. And it actually does it in kind of a brilliant way too, by making the thing that's saving his life kill him. And I know everyone loves to dig on the Marvel villains from phase 1 and 2, and I'll give them phase 2, but to me, almost all of those phase 1 villains had a lot of potential to them. Because you take Vanko, who's hitting him from the personal edge, because he's also going through a lot of stuff, because that's also the movie where you get more insight into his dad. And then you get Justin Hammer, again, with the exception of the 10 to 15 minutes where they just leave the movie in order to make room for Samuel L. Jackson to come in and explain away S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to set up for future Marvel movies. Those two are friggin' awesome. They're both really well acted, and they both test Tony in ways that a lot of other antagonists haven't. The movie is hella fun, too. It manages to up the action in ways from the first one that I never thought. That suitcase suiting up scene in the racetrack in Monaco is so iconic. And it just tests Tony Stark a lot as a character, too. Like, Downey Jr. gives a great performance in that movie, because his sudden new, not lease on life, I should call it, just makes him turn into even more of a dick than he already was. And because he can't tell everyone, it makes everyone like even more worried about his erratic and irrational behavior. Like, it's probably like the best movie I've seen that tackles Tony, that even dared to tackle Tony Stark's alcoholism. So yeah, I'm gonna chalk this one up to the fact that people still weren't sure about the MCU, and obviously because they got so blindsided by future movies, they just looked back and this one felt like an easy movie to dog on. But no, this movie still got a lot of great points. I do not think that Jon Favreau's contribution to the MCU should be overlooked in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, this is still a really great, enjoyable movie and a solid sequel too as well. This is where I start to up it. I'm giving this one 4 stars.
Alright guys, that was my latest ranking of my MCU rankings list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to click the like button and the subscribe button. Follow Talkin TV on all our other links. We're on Facebook and Instagram. The links are in the description below, and be sure to keep coming back for more quality content such as this. Have fun, stay safe, and as always, watch more fucking movies.